Hello and welcome to this video where we are going to continue our brief overview of ethical systems by taking a look at biology and ethics. So in studying the view of biology and ethics, you're basically asking a question as to whether or not there is a biological basis for morality. And so this isn't morality existing someplace within a universe. This is morality existing someplace within an individual. And so you can ask that question. Does human morality exist within a human being? Does it exist within the biology and the brain chemistry that is present within the human being? And if so, has humanity's advancement over and beyond other social animals given us kind of a higher level of morality than what is going to be present? And so therefore, is there kind of this view that morality is emerging from our brains? Morality is emerging from kind of the biological components that are present within our body. So as we've described in previous videos, it's difficult to kind of objectively test for and evaluate moral facts. It's difficult to be able to directly observe and perceive or sense the presence of a moral fact when we're talking about human beings. So what are we going to do? How are we going to test for moral behavior in animals? If I'm going to do a survey for human beings, I can get a clipboard, I can go out to a corner or to a mall and interview people as they come by. Probably not going to work as well if I attempt to interview animals to try to find out what they're doing. And so in order to test for moral behavior and get beyond just simply us projecting our kind of interpretation about what we would be doing in this situation onto an animal, we need to be able to do experimental work. And then it becomes that challenge of interpreting what is morality, or what is the driving factor for an animal's action, and be able to determine, is that truly morality, or is that us trying to project what we would be thinking onto the animal? So one example of an experiment looking at animals in order to determine if they have moral behavior was done about 85 years ago now, in the 1930s, by Franz de Waal, studying chimpanzees. And what they were able to see is that a chimpanzee would attempt to draw attention to itself and promote social behavior when another chimp is going to be present, as opposed to trying to draw attention to itself when it's all on its own. And so therefore, there's this view that basically, at least under these circumstances, these chimpanzees were looking at promoting social behavior, looking at promoting cooperation when they have another colleague, another chimp in this case, being present. So other examples of animal behavior studies have been done since the work of de Waal. Examples of empathy studies looking at how animals interact with other ones have shown that, and again, we are projecting our views onto these animals' behaviors, but they are showing behaviors that could be shown as reconciling. And so if animals were in a fight, they could be shown kind of getting back together and trying to smooth it out. They can be shown consoling one another. And so if an animal has a child that dies, other animals will interact with it in a way that is promoting what we would view as being empathy. Other experiments have shown social mediation, as well as the flip side of consolation is the mourning, that individuals would mourn the loss of a child or of an infant, child or infant, or of a mate in some circumstances. So again, these are attempts at determining whether these animals are showing social behavior, but the question is, are we projecting our view of what we would be thinking onto these animals? So when we take a look at these animal studies, what we can see is that there are good examples of animals exhibiting what we would view as moral behaviors. We would recognize things like empathy and fairness and morality in the actions of these animals. But again, is that the animals doing it themselves, or is that us projecting what we are thinking and what our views are onto the animals being present? So as we study animal behavior, we need to be careful about extending this concept of anthropomorphism. Anthropomorphism is this projection of human thoughts and behaviors onto these animals. And so, we know how we would be thinking under that given situation. How do we know that that animal is doing that? And again, I've got, I think this is a woodcut from Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, where we've got a hare here within a little sport coat and a watch and an umbrella. Probably not going to see that in nature. So we're projecting kind of human thoughts, human behaviors onto the animal in this sense. So if we set aside this view of anthropomorphism and trying to kind of project our human thoughts and emotions and actions onto an animal, we can take a look at what animal behaviors, animal scientists have determined on different types of behaviors in a relationship to one another. Now, at a very basic level, we have ground level behaviors. And so these are kind of unconscious behaviors, instinctive behaviors that may be present kind of intrinsically within the individual's mind. So examples of this could be like birdsong, mating behaviors. If we take a look at a whole variety of insects that have kind of intrinsic mating dances or mating courtship rituals that are going to be present, that are there and are there whether or not an individual has observed it before and learned it from somebody else. In contrast, top level behaviors are going to be those behaviors that are conscious, those behaviors that require thought and intention in order to do that. And so they're not coming necessarily from instinct, but coming from emotion, reasoning, rule following, and tradition. And so if we take a look at a situation over here of a emperor penguin Hundel, we've got penguins in Antarctica. It's incredibly cold, incredibly windy. A individual penguin standing out is going to be subject to kind of the wind chill effect. And so in this huddle, the penguins around the outside are going to be exposed to wind chill, but the penguins to the inside are going to be blocked from that wind, and they're going to be a little bit warmer. And so is this instinctive, or is this all these penguins getting together and say, hey, it's cold, why don't we kind of switch off and some of you get out of the wind for a little while some of us kind of block the wind, and then over time we'll kind of switch it out. And so that's what animal behaviorists are trying to study in determining whether or not protecting individuals from the cold wind is going to be viewed as an altruistic or moral behavior. So examples of behavior that could be viewed as getting into that realm of morality would be taking a look at levels of empathy and prosocial behavior. And so we're looking at bonobos over here, primates that are demonstrating consolation. And so the question is, where's that consolation coming from? Is it simply a prosocial behavior where the action, in this case, to reduce the distress of the object, the person, or not person, the bonobo that is receiving the consolation, is that in an effort just simply to kind of recognize that bonobo is distressed and trying to reduce that distress, or is it truly cognitive empathy? In cognitive empathy, you're making a conscious decision based on an accurate view or accurate perception about what that object, in this case the bonobo receiving the hug, is going through. I see you, I see that you're unhappy, I see that you're distressed, I understand that this is what caused that distress, so I am now going to give you consolation, to try to ease your burden, ease your pain in a conscious effort, recognizing what has caused it and trying to make good in that situation. Another thing we need to be careful with at trying to determine whether an animal is showing empathy or prosocial behavior is this idea of emotional contagion. This is an idea that a similar emotion can be aroused in a subject as a direct result of perceiving that emotion in an object. And so, if you've heard some of these videos I've recorded, often dogs barking in the background. A situation where one dog starts to bark, get excited, all of the other dogs are going to get excited and they're going to start barking as well. And so, illustrated in this cartoon over here, you've got one grumpy dog over here, and all the other dogs are going to become grumpy just by being around that grumpy dog. And so that is something that we need to be careful with when we're trying to determine what is the basis or what is the potential thought going into a behavior, determining the action that we're going to be looking at. So when we're trying to kind of define or assign moral behaviors to animals, we're basically trying to look at whether or not they could be expressing these pro-social behaviors of empathy and sympathy. And so by definition, sympathy is when you feel sorry for an object, sorry for somebody expressing distress, and you're recognizing that distress and trying to help them deal with it. Empathy is when a subject has a similar emotional state to the object that they're viewing. And so I view an individual that is experiencing pain or distress, and as a result of recognizing that pain and distress, I basically feel a little bit of pain or distress as well, because I'm accurately perceiving that that individual's situation or predicament, and I am kind of matching their emotional state. So thank you for listening to this first video on biology and ethics. In the second video in this series, we're going to take a look at the role of evolution and ethics and biology.